We are here for our weekly roundup. We're going to be talking about everything about this week's theme, which is Chameleon Eye Issues. And so, please, I invite you to come and discuss. Put in the chat. Let's talk about what we've gone over. We've spent a video a day over individual thoughts. The detailed podcast was released yesterday. And so today, oh yes, and the video was released just before this live session on YouTube. And so this is our roundup where we're going to finish off the week with any questions or discussions anybody may have. Now, as we've gone over, and go ahead when you have questions or anything to say, go ahead, put it in the chat, and we'll go over it as they come up. But the one thing about eye issues is that they're tricky and they're all over the place. The eyes show the internal health of the chameleon. And so whenever we see an eye problem, we know something's going on that it may not have anything to do with the eye itself, but that's the chameleon shutting down because things are that bad. So by the time it gets to the eye, we know it's a emergency. So we want to get we want to get to the vet as soon as possible because by the time it gets to the point where the eyes are closed, we know we're in the danger zone. But but has been very interesting going through this week and hearing from so many people, getting pictures and seeing their cases. And there's a lot of things out there that look like vitamin A deficiency, which is interesting to me because there's been so much more awareness on the need for multivitamins in the chameleon diet. Now, I've been spending years trying to decrease our dependence on multivitamins, but I have not publicly put that on any of my care summaries. So all of my care summaries have vitamin A in it until we can figure out how chameleons are getting vitamin A. Other than that, I'm going to keep doing that. But it looks like that there's a number of chameleons that seem to not respond to vitamin A therapy, or they keep having their problems. And so that raises a number of very interesting questions, such as, is it really vitamin A deficiency that we're seeing? Is it really the absence of vitamin A that's causing what we call vitamin A deficiency, or is it the absence of some other vitamin or something that vitamin A wants to work with? Is it an overdose that we're looking at? So there's some very interesting questions that we need to we need to consider when we're looking at these health issues. Okay, we have someone who's asking about edema. So not eye related. One chameleon of mine had edema. It cleared up finally when if I can go back to supplementing all of Arcadian stuff. Okay, I see what's happening. So this is an issue with I would slowly add in when you have edema. That's a nutritional imbalance. Then we do go off of multivitamins because the fat soluble vitamins are getting in there and unbalancing things. And so we go down to just calcium until the edema goes away. And I'm very glad to hear that the edema went away. So now I would say very slowly start adding in your multivitamin, maybe once a month. And because this particular chameleon may be extra susceptible to the imbalances that are in our supplementation. And so just do it slowly and be very aware of the health of your chameleon. So the key is to be aware of what's going on, look for subtle changes. We have another one asking if you can buy a Parsons chameleon from me. Nope, I don't have any Parsons chameleons for sale. That'll be a little bit difficult. But another thing about this problem with edema, it's the same thing that I've been talking about with the vitamin A deficiency, is it may not be, it's an imbalance. It could be an imbalance rather than the deficiency of one certain vitamin, because everything needs to be in balance. And we know we have problems if we have too little vitamin A, too much vitamin A, and we know that vitamin A and vitamin D3 interact. And so this isn't just where we can just extract one vitamin out of everything and treat it as an isolated component. They're all interacting with each other. And so we need to be open to the idea, the very likely idea, that vitamin A is interacting with other vitamins in the system. And that may be why some of these conditions start or continue, even though we increase or decrease vitamin A. Oh, okay. Let's just go for various questions. Can you have male and baby chameleons together inside the same enclosure? Not a good idea. Um, chameleons, chameleons can very easily eat each other. It's interesting. Many chameleons hesitate when they see a baby. Like if you get a big male chameleon and you put in a baby chameleon, they may posture at it as if it's a rival male, or and so they don't necessarily see another chameleon as food until they try one. And after a chameleon learns that the baby chameleons are actually food, you're going to be without all of your baby chameleons. So, and Krishna also comes back and asks, how about a male and a female? So don't keep chameleons together. That's just a general rule, and it covers 99% of the cases. You only have chameleons together for mating, but then you keep them apart because they will stress. And if we, once again, see how good I am, I'm tying it back into eye issues. That is, stress is a major killer of chameleons, and not the stress spike, which is taking the chameleon out and saying, hey, how you doing a physical inspection, taking the chameleon to a vet. All of these things are stress spikes. They come and then they go. Chameleons can handle that. That's just normal life. It's just like we can handle it. Okay, we're on the freeway and someone cuts us off, and boy, our adrenaline just goes through the roof and then it goes back down. That's okay. It's the chronic stress, like when a chameleon is in the same cage as another chameleon. It's just day to day to day stress. And we know you go work at a place where everybody's at each other's throat, there's political rivalries all over the place, and you don't know if you're going to be fired or not. You are under constant stress and you feel horrible. You get sick easier. This is because stress is affecting you like it does chameleons. Decreases our immune system, and then we can't fight back all of the bacteria that's always around us wanting to take us down. Well, it's not wanting to take us down. It's just looking for a nice place to live. It just happens to take us down. Mark Rubin's asking, any way to treat papilloma virus growing on eyelids? Better to just leave alone. He's 3.5 years already. Not a big issue yet, but getting there. If it's growing and you know it's the papilloma virus, I don't know specific ways to treat that, but I would definitely get some, see if you can get your vet to work on that. That if it is the papilloma virus, you certainly don't want to be around any other chameleons because you don't want to spread that around. But yeah, I would go to. I'm going to have to defer to a vet because I don't know how to. If you can just if it's effective to cut that off or not. Yeah, that's a tricky one. When chameleons get older and you feed less, how do you adjust for the supplementation? Arcadia schedule. So it doesn't matter what supplementation you use. If when he gets older and you feed less, you just give less supplementation. We don't. Their needs for everything go down. So if they're not growing fast, they don't need all that calcium. In fact, I'm very positive that we get more calcium than they need, but it's not hurting them. So we're not going to figure out how much they need. But they're not growing as much. So, the calcium is for proper organ function and for growing bones. And that's why babies need it so much. So as you decrease food, you can decrease the supplementation. That's not a problem. And even you're still giving your multivitamin twice a month or however long, depending on your species. And so they're still getting that. And they really don't need that much. It's just the dusting of 2, 3 crickets, and that's going to give them what they need, with the caveat that every chameleon is different. And there may be some chameleons that have an increased sensitivity. Like you don't want to give you don't want to give multivitamins to Johnston eye maybe once every 6 months. They just blow up like a balloon. But you can feed Panther chameleons a lot more than twice a month, and they'll be fine. So you just got to be aware of your chameleon. Um, Someone is 7 minutes late. That's okay. The party is just warming up. And another question, MNG Lol, why exactly is it so difficult to get a hold of a Parsons chameleon? Because they aren't imported, which is often, which is a very good thing. They are very expensive and they are difficult to breed. And so it's we don't get a whole lot of captive clutches, and so it's just a difficult chameleon to reproduce. And actually, I'm glad because chameleons are too cheap. And I don't mean that from an elitist standpoint. I mean that from the cheaper the animal, the less likely the animal is going to get the equipment it needs, the husbandry it needs, the attention it needs, and the vet when it needs it. So I am all for chameleons being more expensive, and I'm very glad to see that happening because I see an increased awareness and an increased interest in providing a proper environment. Ray Tripp says, eyes are the window to their health. Absolutely. It's that is 100% true. The one thing about that is by time it's showing itself in the eyes, ooh, that's we know we've got it too far. So, yeah, he's right. You looking at the eyes, and you will see things happening, and then you start to get more and more sensitive, and you can see the warning signs before it gets to the eyes, and you get so attuned to your chameleon's health that you start feeling that there's something wrong before you see anything that you can say, hey, vet, this is wrong. It's like, I just feel something's off, something's not right. And it's amazing how accurate you start to become when you start watching your chameleon every day and noticing their behaviors, and you start noticing it before you can put a finger on it. So that's what you're looking for. That's what you're looking for. And that only comes with time. There's no way to speed that up. I can't produce a checklist. It's like you just have to be in tune with your chameleon. That just comes from observation and knowing them and their mannerisms. Um, when a chameleon closes one eye, are there steps to take before the vet? So this is the big struggle with chameleons and eye issues is you don't know how serious it is. Usually, if only one eye is closed, there's something localized. The very serious things is when both eyes are closed because that's an indication. All of this stuff is an indication. There's never no black and white, but it's an indication that something's happening throughout the entire body. And that's serious. By the time it gets to the eyes, oh, you're in trouble. But if just one eye is affected, that means it's either localized to the eye or else it's just starting. Like it can be the start of vitamin A deficiency. It starts in whichever eye is more susceptible to that. And if it's a scratch or something, then it's localized to the eye. As for when to take it to the vet, that is it's got to be a judgment call, and I would look at the the symptoms surrounding the chameleon. First of all, how quickly did this happen? And things that take a long time for it to happen are can be more serious than if it just happened overnight. Because if it happens overnight, it's like the eye sunken in. It's like something happened to the eye, and you can wait to see. It's like a scratch, or it's just been smacked by a super worm, or the flapping about, or uh, just one of the normal things that happen. Maybe he scratched his eye when he was rubbing it on a branch or something like that. So if that's the case, I'd give it a couple of days. And the important thing is it getting better, or are you noticing signs that it's getting worse? And this is where your observation as a chameleon keeper is paramount, because uh, if it's getting better, you may be able to put off seeing the vet for a while, just to see. Just as long as it keeps getting better, you should be fine. If it's going just a little bit worse, and you say, okay, I'm feeling like it's not getting better. And I mean, if it's not getting better, assume that it's getting worse. And so when it starts to get that it's going worse, you want to get into the vet, because that means that there's something in there that the chameleon can't handle. It could be an infection. It could be that the scratch was deep, and it isn't necessarily that the vet will be able to fix what's going on. If it's a deep scratch, there's nothing you can do except let it heal. But at least you know what you're dealing with, and if it's something you have to address immediately, you do. And if not, then if it's a scratch, the vet takes their scope and sees it's a scratch, and says, okay, it's just going to have to heal. Then at least maybe you have some topical antibiotics to help. You know how you can let your chameleon be more comfortable. Because if a chameleon's not comfortable with their eyes, they start rubbing it all over the place, and who knows what other damage they can do. So it's worthwhile to go to the vet just so you know what it is. But you can give it a day or so, as long as it's not getting worse. Um, oh, okay. Well, here's Bart is giving us an interesting situation. I paid $75 for a veiled from a breeder, plus the 60 shipping. My friend paid plus 60 shipping. My friend paid 75 from the Petco, and his died in a couple of weeks. The eyes looked sunken in, and the arms bones looked round. Well, yeah, we all, those of us in the chameleon community, are well aware with those symptoms. The eyes look sunken in. It could be, if you're talking about in a pet store, dehydration is a suspect. Respiratory infection is a suspect, and the rounded bones are definitely, I won't say definitely, but most likely metabolic bone disease. And you might ask, why um, so much respiratory infection out there? And the reason for that is that the lungs are the number one entry point for bacteria. The chameleon's always breathing in all the time, and so there's always bacteria in the lungs. And the immune system, the whole job of the immune system is to make sure that bacteria doesn't cause a problem. And so that's why a strong chameleon, a healthy chameleon, has absolutely no problems, even though the bacteria is always there. It's because the immune system is doing its job. When you are stressed, or for whatever reason, the physical stress of the husbandry isn't correct, and so the chameleon's constantly struggling against temperature too high, too low, water not enough, and so that takes a toll on the immune system. Maybe it's the emotional. They're stressed because they're in a cage with another chameleon, or they can see a cat always hanging out, or something like that. Could be nutritional. They're just being fed empty crickets from the pet store that aren't gut loaded, and so they're eating, but they're not being fulfilled. All of this stuff stresses the system, and then the immune system is finally overpowered by the bacteria in the lungs, and then you get an infection. Of course, infection in the lungs, the bigger the infection, the harder to breathe, and eventually the chameleon will die. But this is why a respiratory infection is so common. It's because if your husbandry is not on, then that's a likely first thing to happen. So that's why we see a lot of it. Such and such is actually at the eye doctor. Okay, excellent. Um, Bart says his chameleon was making popping sounds from the mouth. Well, there you go. That is almost assuredly a respiratory infection. So you've got a chameleon with a respiratory infection, metabolic bone disease. So this is a chameleon that needs a total revamp of husbandry, and hopefully the vet can give supporting fluids and such to this chameleon so he has a second chance. But here's a absolute perfect example of how husbandry makes all the difference in the world. Both of those conditions, the respiratory infection and the metabolic bone disease, either one of those will kill a chameleon. Both of those can be avoided by proper husbandry. So if the chameleon was not stressed, was given the proper nutrition, the proper cage, there would be no respiratory infection. If the chameleon got the proper calcium, the proper UVB light, the chameleon would not have metabolic bone disease. And so you've got a chameleon with two life-threatening conditions that are completely 100%, almost 100% husbandry related. Yes, you can have a decreased immune system because of something that happens, but generally speaking, it's husbandry. And really, guys, you can avoid ever being at the vet by the proper husbandry. Yes, things happen. Yes, a cricket or superworm fights back, and you got to go in because there's a bite or something or chomped wrong. So there's exceptions. I mean, we're never gonna make vets obsolete, no matter how good we get at husbandry. But so much. I mean, I talked to my vet, and he's very good with people, but vets are tired of seeing the same thing over and over again. And it's interesting that their whole job is to keep you from having to go back to giving them what they're paid for. So yeah, husbandry. Just learn it, be obsessed by it, watch your chameleon, and take a look at what they're telling you, and adjust your husbandry to what your chameleon needs. That's it. Let's see. My Panther chameleon, such and such, says my Panther chameleon just got a huge, tall cage. Excellent. Uh, the thing about big cages is that even though they may not necessarily need all that space. Chameleons don't need to run laps. They're not that kind of animal. They are meant to stay in places. The big cage helps you create the proper husbandry, because our task as chameleon keepers is we need to create an environment. We're not taking care of a chameleon. We are creating an environment that has all the heat and humidity, the plants, the cover. And so the larger the space we're working with, the easier it is for us to create that environment that has microclimates and heat gradients and even humidity gradients, UVB. So a large cage is for both your chameleon and you. Uh, I'd say smaller cages are for experts, and you really need to know what you're doing if you want to make a small cage work, because I mean that's just the way it is. James is saying it's best to get the right equipment and timers, or you're going to have a hard time keeping consistent. A cage with proper ventilation, like a Dragon Strand or Raptor Breeze, T5, 5.0, high output, Mr. Fugger. Yep. James has a list of what you need to keep the chameleon happy. And really, we have come so far in the community, and there's the equipment that you need for proper husbandry is readily available. It does cost money. Like the mister, you want a good mister, that's $125, $140 for a really good solid mister. But the benefit of that is it's on timer and it goes off when it should, and you add a fogger in there and you've got a complete hydration cycle, and all you have to do is make sure the system's clean and refill the water and then monitor for hydration, because it's always work. But the equipment, we have cages designed specifically for chameleons. I mean, I've spent a lot of my the last 10, 7, 8, 9 years. I've been doing Dragon Strand for almost 9 years now. It's specifically for chameleons, caging for chameleons. We have misters and foggers and the lights specifically. So everything is there for the person. And this is why I try to discourage people from getting chameleons, because they see chameleons in the movies. But if somebody is serious about researching, understanding chameleons, and doing what it takes for a proper setup, it's really easy. Keeping chameleons is easy under those conditions. It's not that you could just go to Petco and grab something and it'll work. No, you can't even. It's hard to put together a usable system from the stuff that's available at Petco. Now these big chains are starting to get better. And PetSmart is having Arcadia UVB lights, so things are starting to get better. And we're starting to get some companies that are becoming more and more commercial, like Dragon Strand was. It's pretty much a very small. It's a boutique cage company, and the industry has grown. And so, I'm working on, do I keep it as a boutique cage company where it's a hand built by a small team? Do I expand? Do I really want to jump up to that larger level? But the thing is, when I started, that is what could serve the community. But our community's gotten so big that we need to go to the next level. And other companies are coming out that are providing equipment, cages, and lighting. I mean, I just had Leap, Tim Mark from Leap on, and I mean that's a serious commercial uh, uh, company making equipment that is targeted towards chameleons. Yeah, they do geckos and all that's other reptiles and dart frogs and such, but they're targeting. That's saying that our community's gotten to the point where we can support that major kind of commercial outlay into our community, and that is a good thing. That is a very encouraging thing. So it's just getting better for all of us. Right, Trip saying that 125 is for the basic missing system that I carry. Yeah, that's a good Miss King if you want for a cage or two. That'll do it. And I got to say, misting systems. There's a number of misting systems are available, from the relatively cheap Zoomed Reptirain all the way up to the Mist King at 125. They're not terribly different as far as cost goes, but as far as functionality goes, it's night and day difference. Do not cut corners on your misting system. It's just not worth it. The difference in quality is substantial. This isn't okay, well, this one's a nicer shade of blue, or this is a brand name. No. The Mist King or Climb Mist is the way to go for a misting system for chameleons. So, and such say, I got a huge tall cage for my Panther chameleon 1 to 2 weeks ago. Excellent. And for those people looking at this, if you've got a small cage, if you've got a 36-inch cage, because some pet stores say that's okay, even some keepers say that's okay, go for your 48-inch. That is the minimum. And actually, yeah, I say minimum only because there isn't something larger that is readily available. I'd like it to be bigger than 2 feet wide, but just go for the biggest you can, and you will not regret it. Even if it's a juvenile, a 3-month-old juvenile, don't get a small cage. Go for at least the 2 by 2 by 4 foot. Go bigger if you can. Make your cage if you can. Here I am. I'm a cage manufacturer, and I'm telling you, make your own cage if you have a space and you have the abilities to make a larger cage. People that make them commercially have limitations. If you want to make in a quotes affordable cage, if you want to be able to ship it out, there's some things that you have to take into account, like how big of a box you have, and if you have a cage that breaks down, that's an art in itself. So more, let's just say, the bigger the cage, the better. Um, Moss High says, I planned to get a chameleon 10 years ago and ended up getting a dog. Oh, you know what? I love dogs, so I'm not going to fault you for that. I think you made a good decision. She passed away, however, and I plan to get a chameleon next. I plan to get a Haba first, and then the command. She wants to get the habitat first, and then the chameleon. And I plan to do very little handling. That's perfect. That's the way to do it. I mean, most people get the chameleon first, and they say, "Okay, what do I do with it?" Because they were very excited. But the absolute best thing to do is get all the equipment in. You don't know. Some things take time. There's lead times in getting some things, and when you get all the equipment in first and set it up, you'll find things and questions that you have that are very good to answer before you actually put a chameleon in there, and so you can get your systems down. And there's a huge advantage to doing that before you get your chameleon, so you're not sitting there trying to go through all of this and figure all this out while your chameleon is sitting in the cage. Um, absolute, you're doing the DMOS high, you're doing it exactly right, and very little handling. That's the perfect expectation to go in with. There are some chameleons that end up being friendly. And if you stick your hand in the cage and your chameleon crawls off their branch onto your arm on their own without you sticking your hand in front of them, then you've got a chameleon that's friendly, but and doesn't seem to mind handling. But you need to be aware of their condition, so you put them back as soon as it gets too much for them. But going in with the expectation that you won't be handling is the perfect way to do it, because then you won't be disappointed if you get a typical chameleon, of which a typical chameleon doesn't like being handled. It's all about the expectations. And then you get what you get, and you love your chameleon for what they are. Bart says, you ain't lying. Most of my check went on chameleon stuff. Yes. My mom laughs because she says I take care of the chameleon more than I do myself. That's my buddy. How can I not? Yes. Bart has got it exactly. It's amazing how much I know because of my love for chameleons. Everything I know about human nutrition, I actually learned because through chameleons first, and then, oh, hey, that's the same for humans too. That's interesting. Oh, we love our little guys. Such and such says, be aware of the chameleon's body language too. Yep. And that's a challenge, because we come in with our own bias. How do you know what a chameleon is saying? It's kind of like a foreign language or a foreign culture of humans. Everybody's got their own background. How do you know what the chameleon is saying until you have the experience? And all you can do is interpret it through through your experiences. And in the case of chameleons and humans, that's absolutely wrong, because they have such a different way of living in life, view of life, a different culture. You can't apply human interpretations to their actions, kind of like the closed eyes. When they're sitting on your hand and closed eyes, that's when they're way stressed. That's a horrible situation for them to be in. And yet people say, oh, they trust me. And it's very hurtful to their feelings when they learn, no, that's not a good thing for chameleons. So, yes, body language. Demos High says, thank you for sharing your knowledge. You're very welcome. I appreciate you being here and hanging out with me. A friend on Facebook says, took me months to get the best cage available, which is the dragon strand. Thank you very much. And got a second. Yeah, I've worked hard on making these cages so they're good for us chameleon keepers. I wanted cages for me, and so that's why the cages are designed the way they are. Um, Such and such said, Ming LOL is saying, what is the hardest chameleon species to keep? Hardest chameleon species to keep depends upon your conditions. It's the one that lives in an area that is the most different from where you live, because chameleon keeping is hard only if you don't give them the proper husbandry conditions. And if you are working extra hard, say you live in Arizona, where in an area where the humidity is in single digits, and you want to bring in a Crocerus cristatus, the crested chameleon, which is a high humidity species. They enjoy that. Um, then you're going to have a real hard time. You need to create an enclosed terrarium with little ventilation, but make sure there's enough ventilation. So it's going to be a big challenge. But if you get something like the Namaquensis, that is a desert chameleon, well, you're going to have a much easier time. Whereas somebody in Washington, where with all the rainfall, may have a harder time with Namaquensis, and for Status, no problem. So it's really the husbandry. As far as chameleon species that hate human beings, wild-caught Trioceras oweni, which is a three-horned species, tends to really hate humans. They will literally just fall out of the tree if you look at them wrong. And the one breeder I know of them, when the wild-caught came in, he had to keep them in a cage that was completely enclosed and just have little eye holes so he could look at them so they wouldn't stress out. So as far as chameleons that are really nuts, Owini is a good pick for the hardest. Although it's interesting that the babies that were hatched were not like that at all. They were just like any normal chameleon, and they had no problem with humans any more than a normal chameleon does. So that's it's not for some reason being wild caught that just gave them some heightened instincts, more so than say a wild caught panther chameleon, which I've had wild caught panther chameleons have no problem with me. So there's little interesting things. Such and such says, I've been watching Chameleon Academy for a long time. Thank you a lot. You're very welcome. I'm very glad to have you here. And I'm enjoying doing my new system where I do a weekly theme and then a daily video that has one thought a day. I'm having a lot of fun with that. And I'm hoping you're all enjoying that as well. What is the best weight for female panther chameleon to start breeding? Camille, I would say that it just depends on the panther chameleons. Some of them can get larger, be mature, and be smaller. But I say wait a year till they get to the adult coloration. I go more by the coloration than the weight. But I wouldn't have a specific number for you that I would be confident would work in most cases. Mary Jo Smith says, what is your thought of converting a ferret nation cage for a panther chameleon? I don't know the exact cage you're talking about, but I'm assuming it's going to be a cage that has metal bars that are at least close enough that a ferret can't get out. And I'll assume that they're close enough that a panther chameleon can't get out. You can convert those kind of cages. People have converted bird cages, ferret cages into holding panther chameleon or any chameleon. And the things you have to watch out for are, number one, the environmental conditions. Since you have essentially 100% ventilation, you're going to have a trouble holding in humidity. And so that's the big thing. I mean, that's the problem we have with chameleon screen cages, and why I talk about how screen cages are not perfect cages for chameleons in most cases. So you'll have trouble keeping in the humidity, and you'll have trouble keeping in the feeder insects, and then the spray from the mister. So those are the three things to look into. and all of those things can be solved. So if you have a ferret nation cage, any sort of cage, um, that you can get one that's larger than the commercially available chameleon cages, then that's definitely the way to go. I wouldn't go for a cage like that if it was smaller than the standard chameleon cages. So if it's larger than the 2 by 2 by 4 foot, then going for a cage like that is that it may be a very good idea because you're going to be able to you can trick it out. You can enclose sides easily to increase the humidity retention and to keep the mist from going out. You can use feeder insects and a tolerant approach to life. You can use a feeder run cup, and as long as you're tolerant to things that actually do escape, you can not be bothered. The width of the cage bars is not that big of a deal. So, whatever you want to do, how much work you want to do to it. If it's larger, then it's worth doing all of that work. Let's see. Where can I find driftwood and branches? Haven't found any at big retailers. Don't don't need the driftwood. There's no reason for big wood chunks. What you're looking for is thin branches that they can get their little hands halfway or all the way around. That's the diameter you're looking for. And I go to parks. I look for parks that have oak trees, and I get oak branches directly from parks and wild areas. Be careful, some places you're not allowed to take stuff out, but uh, oak is great. Just about any other tree. I don't like pine. I don't like bamboo. But if it's got a branch with a good gripping surface and it's the right diameter, it should work. I don't. I know a lot of people talk about sterilizing their branches from the outside. I have never sterilized a branch, and I'm not going to tell you shouldn't. If you want to sterilize it, go ahead. But I will say I've never run into a case where that was necessary. But so I find them in the wild areas and in parks. Such and such is saying, my chameleon, when he sleeps, he turns bright orange color at night. Yes, it is amazing that it's just a characteristic of chameleons that they rest in bright colors, and I don't know why. Their skin is light sensitive, so that may have something to do with it. And this when you go searching for chameleons and you shine your flashlight. When you first shine your flashlight, they glow. They reflect that light. But very soon, the skin reacts to the light, and they start getting darker, and then you won't be able to find them with the flashlight anymore. So, interesting little tidbit about hunting for chameleons in the wild. So, well, I'll ask all of you how you have done as far as your experiences with eye issues. Have you had a lot of problems? And what was the solution? I noticed in my DMs on on Instagram, because YouTube here doesn't allow you a private messaging feature. I've had a lot of people come in with things that look like vitamin A deficiency, and it's been interesting. So, what are your experiences? You go ahead and share what your experience is, especially if you went to a vet and you actually got an actual diagnosis. Um, it's interesting to see what they come up with, and I'm not always. I'm sometimes surprised. Like I didn't know that there was a tube connecting the eye to the mouth until I had one chameleon that did it. Vet showed me exactly what's going on, and that there was an infection in the mouth, and it would travel up, and the eye would just extend and become grotesque. So that was interesting. And then I noticed other chameleons that had eye problems where they extend. I say, yeah, I can see the infection there. Like I went through, looked at a picture of a Jackson's chameleon that I had from 20 years ago, and then I had that eye extended, but then I could see, oh, wait a minute, it's got a temporal gland infection. Well, it's probably not temporal gland. It was stomatitis, so it was mouth rot. So we're all always learning, and over the very many decades that I've done this, there's been a lot of experiences. Such saying, I've had no eye problems with my Panther chameleon. Good, good. I'm glad to hear that. That's one way. I am glad that there's been so much information available and people are researching and they're getting their chameleons after knowing what they need to do. And so it's encouraging. I've got a cricket loose that needs to be taken care of, but not now. I'm in a live session. Oh. One of our friends from Facebook is saying, I've had Willow for a month now, and so far he's doing quite well. Just added a Laban. Oh, she's closing 4 months now. Okay, good. And you know what? The best thing for me to hear about is that there are no eye issues. You've had no husbandry related issues. That says everything is working, and really that's the purpose of the Chameleon Academy, is to get this out there. And the more we get it out there, so the problem, the internet is so big that I've got, I don't know how many pages on that Chameleon Academy, more than 100 pages of chameleon husbandry experience. But I get so many people, they've never heard of the Chameleon Academy. And in my world, of course, I spend most of my time, an amazing amount of my time, putting together chameleon husbandry information through the podcast and the video. And yet, there are so many people in the chameleon community that don't know about it. And so the internet is so big that you can do research and not find the best information. So we all just have to be more visible. And that's what I'm trying to do with these daily videos, is just be more visible on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. And so just get this out there that this information exists. Bart is sharing. Mine had a problem with his eye because he grabbed the bug by the butt, so it bit him. Yeah. Funny, because now he only grabs them by the head. Now he'll take his time looking for the head. But he was fine after. Yeah, it's chameleons usually specifically go for the head. And if they mess up, like sometimes a superworm can confuse them as to which side is the front, like especially superworms that for whatever reason run backwards. So yeah, they're a little confusing. But yeah, when a superworm bites them, comes around and bites them, yeah, they learn. They're learning that. Mm. Okay, folks, we have come to the end of this week, which is eye issues. Next week, we're going to dive into UVB. And my intention for next week is that when you get through next week, including the podcast and the video, that you will have a solid understanding of UVB. And I mean the UVB basics. I'm not going to concentrate on saying this is what you should do. I'm going to go and start at the bottom, foundation level of this is how you understand UVB. And this is how you understand how to implement UVB, how to set up a cage with the correct UVB, how to choose what UVB you want in that cage. Because when you learn what to do, you don't know what to do when things change. When you learn why you're doing what you do, when we learn more, then you're able to adjust very easily. Like right now, we've got to the point where we figured out that UV index of 3 is a very good basking UVB index for panther chameleons and veiled chameleons, and probably most other chameleons. We don't know what the upper limit is. Ferguson's zones have it at UV index of 7.4. I've tested it to 6, so let's just say between 6 and 8. Right now, that's the idea. But what happens if Tanzania opens and you get the dwarf Jackson's chameleon, Trocerus jacksoni miramontanus, who comes from very high in the mountain, so the UVB is going to be more intense. So if we decide, okay, maybe we should give UV index of 10 just at one point in the cage, if you understand how the UVB comes off of the light and how to set it up within the cage, you will be able to easily adjust between Miramontanus that may like the more intense UVB, and Cristatus, which doesn't want any UVB. I mean, I won't say any, but boy, it's hard to catch them under UVB. So by understanding the foundation and the basics of UVB, you will be able to adjust for the different species of chameleons that you may or may not you may be keeping in the future. Juan has showed up. Hello, Juan. You're here. Excellent. And hello, Elise from Ontario, Canada. And Daniel from Texas is followed Chameleon Academy info for Veiled. Has 0 issues in the last 2 years. Excellent. That is what we want to hear. 0 issues. Taking good care of your feeders is important too. Daniel, you're right. When I talked about stress for chameleons, nutritional stress is a real thing. And that's where your feeders aren't nutritional. When you get crickets from a store, they are empty shells. Maybe they've been fed some carrots, maybe. But you are not going to have a healthy chameleon if you feed them crickets that are empty shells. So learning about the nutrition and making sure your feeder insects are nutritious and well fed and cared for is an important part of chameleon husbandry. And so, yes, you will find out. Bringing a chameleon into your life, you become a bug farmer. You start taking care of bugs and you start caring about how the bugs eat. So it's amazing how in our chameleon hobby, we end up touching so many other aspects of nature because it's all connected. It's all connected. Well, we are coming to the end of today's live session. Are there any final questions? And at this point, you can take any questions you have about chameleons, about me. By the way, everybody, I don't know if you heard, I got my first ever emerald tree boa, and I am so in love with her. She's a juvenile. She's a true U.S. captive bred and born. And emerald tree boas give live birth. So, and she is still orange. She is just now getting in her greens. And so I am very excited. If you want to see her as she grows up, check out the Chameleon Academy Instagram account, because I can guarantee you that my little green snuggle noodle is going to make her way onto that Instagram account. And I'll probably have to make a video of her too. So, what is accusing me of being a show off? Oh, show it off. I will. Right now, she literally just got in. And so I think maybe my next live session, I'm not bothering her at all. And so next live session, I will show, I will bring the emerald tree boa to show you all. Let's see. Elise West is asking, why is Atticus eating his branches? That's a very good question, and we don't know the answer. Why are they eating branches? Yeah, it's different than eating plant matter, but why do they eat plant matter? Why do they eat soil? We've got the idea that it may be nutritional. And I got to say, honestly, I don't know. Nobody has ever come up with a definitive and satisfying answer to why certain chameleons start chewing on certain things. So you just roll with it. and you'll have 10 panther chameleons, and only one of them will chew on his branches. And so it's very difficult to find a pattern as to what's going on. So is there something in their diet that they think that that's going to fulfill? Do they have certain uh, sensitivities as individuals? Don't know. So um, I wish I had all the answers. I don't have it on that one. Such and such is saying the thing that's sad about some chameleon owners is when the chameleon hisses, the owner thinks it's funny and teases them. Oh boy, if we took a collection of all the things that happen on social media that are cringeworthy, chameleons grabbing running water from the faucet, uh, it's it can be depressing. But yeah, that's an example of someone not understanding chameleons, not caring about the chameleons. Chameleons are just toys to them. And I'm really sad about how cheap veiled chameleons are, because that ends up making them being placed in homes like this where they're treated as toys instead of uh, living animals. And so when you all hear me talk about how chameleons should be more expensive, that's really the reason why. It's not that I want to keep them out of hands of people that really are serious. It's just when they're cheap, people don't bother getting the correct caging. They don't want to spend $125 for a mister. Oh, that's more than twice what I spent for the chameleon. I'm not doing that. You get people with the wrong mindset. And will that chameleon ever see a vet? No. No, they don't want to spend any more. I mean, I sell cages. They don't want to spend more on the cage than they do the chameleon. Well, when the chameleon was sold to you for $25 at the end of the show because the person didn't want to go home with them, yeah, you're not going to be able to find equipment for that. So, yeah, it'd be nice. I'm enjoying that chameleons are getting higher cost. We're getting a better class of people enjoying chameleons, and I guess I got to be careful. I don't want to say a better class of people. People more willing to be serious, and I don't want that to make it seem that people that don't have a lot of money won't be serious, because you can get a person who uh, doesn't have a lot of money who is excellent with chameleons. Like I said, you don't need expensive vet bills. You don't need expensive this and that. If you know what you're doing, if you're so serious and dedicated to that animal, you can actually do it pretty cheap. So it's really not that the people with more money are better. It just keeps it out of the hands of people who treat them like toys. But anyway, just trying my own uh, pontificating here. Elise is saying he's also grinding his bum on my arm. Elise, you've got a character there who's got a lot going on. I don't know. Bye, such and such. Thank you for dropping by. And D Moss High is saying mine will be a living artwork. Yeah, treat them with respect. Treat them with respect. They don't need the most expensive stuff. They just need your respect and your attention, and to do it right. So, all right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. It's been wonderful. Next week, remember, the theme's going to be UVB. This is going to be a serious educational week, and I hope to see you there. So join me on Instagram. If you haven't checked out the video that I just released at 8 o'clock on YouTube on ISU, check that one out. And there's also a podcast that goes into more detail on the any podcast player. So thank you all for being here. It's been wonderful having you here, and I will see you on the various other things that we do. And if you want an email summary of everything that we've done, go to chameleonacademy.com. The homepage, there's a button you scroll down to where it says sign up for the newsletter. If you click that, sign up for a newsletter. Sunday night, tomorrow night, I'm going to send out an entire summary of everything that we've done this week. And so you can use that as reference however you want. So anyway, see y'all later.